Cons of Reddit. What's the most terrifying thing you saw inside of prison? Part 3. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. Dad got his neck slit for standing up against gang leaders. He's been in prison for 23 years and after that day hasn't had an issue since. Grabbed his throat to stop the blood, took the knife, and stabbed the guy. Adding a comment I made so more people can see it. Oh yay, definitely. If people knew what truly went on with finances and treatment of prisoners, they'd be pissed. Also, my dad's job is to pack meat that ends up in our local grocery stores. With his stories, I personally barely eat meat now. Worth looking into, but only if you're ready for a super depressing realization of how our country actually operates. Private prisons exploit people. When they get let out, they get $50 and a bus ticket. Get mad they don't rehabilitate prisoners and then let them out with virtually nothing. It's dangerous and scary. What's stopping them from more crime? They have nothing. Consider knowing 25 major banks have a collective reserve repo of multiple trillions of dollars. Borrowed money. Since they've already loaned out all of their customers' money, they need liquidity. Yes, they loan out your money and make profit off of it. Loans are not the bank's money. The money in your bank account is loaned out right now. It is a fake number in a fake system. I'm begging you all to check out how US financials work. It is so fucking fucked. United we stand, divided we fall, aka politic disagreements. Please add it up, man. It is a show to keep you distracted, while we pay for private prisons to operate at the lowest level possible. And literally any other thing such as schools, homelessness, fucking VA benefits. He doesn't even have a C in Florida. Also consider corrections officers don't need any experience. Sorry for the semi-off-topic rant. Just have learned a lot this past year about that kind of thing, and it's incredible how many people don't realize how truly fucked and fake our monetary system is. US-based prison topics hit home for me, and one reminds me of the other. At the end of the day, they are people too. Except child molesters. They can get fucked to hell, and in prison they most definitely do. Quote. Not an ex-con, but ex-prison guard. I have a couple of things that provoke varied feeling depending, because there is no worst thing among them. Working at the mentally ill prison, I saw one of the prisoners who would shove small rubber pens down his urethra whenever he wouldn't get what he wanted. He was often restricted from these items, but sometimes received them from other inmates, or would go long stretches without incident. Then do it again. Same prison, different guy, saw him cut up his chest, belly, arms, and thighs. He tried to bleed out, with his guts hanging out. We had to fight him to get him out of his cell to get treatment while slipping in his blood. At a non-mental ill prison, the worst thing I saw was our commanding supervisor make the call that a guy who was found dead and rigor mortis in his cell to have a heartbeat, to justify driving him off grounds to be declared dead at the hospital, not on ground, way less paperwork, super corrupt. Saw a whole bunch of bad fights too that ended with some bad wounds. But I think those are my top 3 that stick with me a few years later. My bunkie was this tiny little woman in her 40s with crazy eyes who would sit on top of her bunk and chant for all hours of the night. She had a reputation for being nuts and just straight up weird. Needless to say, 21-year-old me was freaked TF out when I got moved into a cell with her. She was on the top bunk, me on bottom, and she did, in fact, sit up at all hours of the night chanting and talking to herself. I called my mom one night and she pulled up her case information. Allegedly, my bunkie was serving a 40-plus year sentence for stabbing a boyfriend in the ear with a screwdriver, along with a handful of other charges. Fast forward a few weeks. This woman and I became closer than I ever imagined possible. Not sexually or romantically, but she became like an overprotective mother bear to me. So much so, that's what I started calling her Mama Bear, and she called me Baby Bear. And she made sure everyone knew to leave her baby bear alone. Fast forward to one evening after dinner. Every night I took my shower at the same time after chow. By the time I got out, Mama Bear would be back from her Zumba classes and jump in right after me. So one night, Mama Bear is still out when this big bish cuts in front of me for the shower. Shower line is always a pretty big deal in there, but I didn't really care because I wasn't in a hurry anyways, and I figured I would just take mine later or after Mama. Then Mama Bear walked in. First thing she asked me was why I didn't take my shower yet. I explained the situation and calmly told her someone else got in before me, but it was okay and I would shower later. It was not okay. Mama Bear got the craziest look in her eyes and says, to no one in particular, Nobody fucking cuts Mama Bear or Baby Bear. I follow her as she's storming towards the bathroom. This woman then goes into a blind rage and proceeds to rip her clothes off, rip down the shower curtain, and climb into the shower with the bish who cut in front of me. The whole time Mama Bear isn't blinking while Big Bish is looking stunned like WTF is going on? Then Mama Bear, while staring into this woman's soul, snatches the soap right out of Big Bish's hand, starts soaping herself up with it while screaming at her, "You wanna cut me in my bunkie? You wanna take her turn? You wanna take mine? Oh nah bitch. We showering in this motherfucker together then ho." Big Bish didn't even wash off. She just grabbed her towel and ran TF out of there as fast as she could. Mama Bear then finished her shower and went on to play cards like nothing ever happened. Needless to say, nobody ever cut me during showers ever again. Mama Bear was definitely certified fucking nuts. But boy did I grow to love her. Absolutely the best bunkie I could have ever gotten. May even have to look her up in 27 more years when she gets out. Okay, so I went to prison in 2020, not like the county jail. The county jail is a place where you await trial and sentencing for whatever crime you committed. Once you receive your sentence, if it is greater than a year you generally get sent to prison, a bigger facility with more to do. Well, after sitting in the county for a while the bus came to pick us up and off we went. Now in my state, Georgia, they sent you to a diagnostic prison before going to the prison you'll be at for the remainder of your sentence, and for men it's called Jackson State Prison. They put me in an open dorm with bunks 3 high. I was in there with lifers, murderers and child predators. Gang violence in prison is real. Anyway, in the dorm I was in these 2 guys got in an argument over I don't know what, and it escalated pretty fast. One dude was a Blood and the other dude a Crip. So soon it was an all-out brawl and the Crip dude ended up stabbed in the face. The guards never came in, eventually everything worked itself out, and no one died. Crazy how prison has its own politics. Fuck that place. Clyde Barrow of Bonnie and Clyde fame was sentenced to hard time for robbery at East Ham Prison, Texas, a prison so cruel and harsh it gained the name, the Bloody Ham. Guards would never intervene with the prisoners unless someone was actively getting murdered, and even then they didn't care. To keep order, they employed especially psycho prisoners as building tenders to beat the rest into submission. Ed Crowder was one such man. He was a sadistic rapist who preyed on the smallest guy in the room. Clyde was famously scrawny and little, but he was incredibly tenacious. For 10 months, Crowder brutally raped Clyde. The other prisoners were just happy they weren't the ones targeted. Eventually, Clyde had enough. He got into contact with another building tender, a lifer called Scally who hated Crowder almost as much as Clyde did. Clyde told him he was going to kill Crowder. Scally told him he would take the blame for the murder, as he was doing life anyway. One night, Clyde sauntered past Crowder's bunk and walked alone into the showers. A prime target, Crowder lurched after him, cornering Clyde with a smirk. Clyde took out a concealed lead pipe and destroyed Crowder's skull. Scally then came out of the shadows and shanked the body several times, giving himself an intentional slash on the ribs. The guards thought it was an open and shut case and Clyde got away with it. It was his first murder. He was very grateful to Scally for taking the rap and promised to break him out. A few years later, he stayed true to his word. Now in the middle of his crime spree with Bonnie, they raided the prison with machine guns, freeing 5 prisoners in the process. They planned a mass breakout, but Clyde particularly wanted to free Scally. Unfortunately for them, he was not freed. So I'm a woman and was locked up in county jail for quite a while. Every time someone comes in with drugs or paraphernalia it's a big deal, and depending on who you know and how you handle the situation, it can end very bad for that person. One time a girl, she was in her early 20s, came in with a meth pipe. She was very open about this and let everyone in the pod use it. Just a few hours later she asked for it back and said she was rolling out to a different pod. The major problem with this is that the pipe was now full of someone else's meth. About 10 girls lined up and jumped her. It was a free-for-all. She was screaming for help but none came. Then 2 women took her into the bathroom and closed the door. The thing about jail, prison is that there's really only one place you're gonna put something that you're trying to hide on you, and that's inside you. So a few minutes later the 2 come out and are wiping the blood off their hands. They had got the pipe back. A few minutes later the girl comes out crying and her pants are soaked with blood. She gets the deputy's attention this time. She was pregnant, she said. She had a miscarriage and the jail released her due to the incident. How long does it take to get used to taking a dump in a small room with another random person? I've worked, medical, in jails, and that is the worst part from what I could see. Well, and the food. I need to be alone, a lot. And man, COs are total uneducated dicks in most jails. In one county they and the majors in charge actually cared and tried to be good to the inmates that weren't assholes. But most places they are dicks that even mess with the mentally ill folks for fun. Went to a Scared Straight style program when I was like, wasn't in it just documenting it. However, this program was a little on the more fucked up end. The kids met a guy named Rick. Rick was a super sweet individual, very friendly, very confident and expressive. Told jokes with a huge smile on his face. Asks the kids, "Y'all know why I'm in here?" Kids say, "No," he says, "because I killed and ate my entire family at your age." He then proceeded to tell them how exactly he did it. Right up to their faces, still charismatic, still nice and everything. Never have I ever been more scared of an individual person. My brother, UK prison. My brother could hold his own in a fight and came from a rough area growing up. My parents moved to give me a better life. So he worked his way up the ranks in prison. I'll tell two of many stories minus one. My brother had OCD amongst many other mental health issues. He collected sanitary products. Had to have a few of each thing at any given time. He would sell them too in exchange for cigs and stuff. He had lots of different stuff, all good. Worked the prison kitchen to afford them. Well, the guards didn't like that he was making bank and had his own team of sellers and buyers and tried to shut it down. It wasn't illegal or anything, but they rushed my brother's cell. Messed everything up and took everything, gutted bare. So he organized a revolt, which essentially ended in a 12-hour standoff with him and some others chilling on the roof of the prison, refusing to come down. He peed on an officer when they tried to club the outside of the building up to him. 2. They found out a guy soon to be released into general pop, previously in solitary, was a pedo and R at PIST on multiple counts. He was boasting about it to the guards, so the guards spoke about it in hearing distance to inmates in Gen Pop, even specifying the guard change. Long story short, that scum ended up disabled with no eyes and no P3NIS and a sore ass. So many inmates were involved they couldn't punish one person for it, but they were forced to show they would do something. My brother and a couple other inmates for a few months added, and that's it. There are many other stories perhaps for another time, but I'd like to just add my brother has been out 10 years now with proper mental health care and medication and support from services he never got growing up and is doing much better. He had his own business, shut due to the pandemic, but starting back up once he gets everything together again. I was only in for a week in a female prison. Wasn't horrifying, but what disgusted me, the absolute filth. One rag with no cleaning product to clean the floor, sink, toilet and shower. No eating utensils, eat with your hands or off the tray and the trays are rinsed with water. No brushes or dishwashing liquid. No shampoo or any toiletries. Youngster in for breaking her 6-week-old baby's leg. One high-profile killer in our country, prostitute, stripper who killed a guy with her partner and left him in the boot at a casino. Who told me I was disgusting because my hair was dirty. I replied that I found murder disgusting. And all she could talk about was her BF and how she needed to look good for him when she was him in court. He was also on trial for the murder. And just how callous she was in talking about her hair and sharing snacks with others. Randomly very high school mean girl vibes. Woman talking to someone else about how the social workers had turned her 13-year-old daughter against her and her daughter had shown no loyalty to her mother by telling the social worker how her mom knew about the stepdad molesting her but hadn't done anything about it. This grown woman was disgustedly complaining about how bad her daughter was for not covering her part in the sexual abuse. I wasn't in prison, but I was told this story from a friend's dad who served time which was in the 70s. Basically, in most prisons here in the UK, if you've been involved in a high-profile crime or anything child-related, you're in a completely isolated wing of the prison for the prisoner's own protection. One day there was a mix-up and a pedophile was placed in with the general population. Well, it didn't take long for the rest of the prisoners to find out. My friend's dad reckons the screws, prison officer, purposefully put him in general population based off what he did and tipped off other inmates. During breakfast, a group of prisoners grabbed this guy while none of the screws were around, which is why he believes they were involved in the setup as they were always on duty during mealtimes, took him over to a huge tea urn, a massive metal pot for boiling large quantities of water, and was thrown in head first. Being a nonce, pedophile. No one would dare help him for fear of association, so he was kept in this urn for what must have been 30 seconds to a minute. The screws eventually returned and pulled him out of the urn, and this guy's skin was literally just falling off. He said it was the worst thing he had ever seen in his entire life and proper turned his stomach. My friend's dad didn't know if the guy survived or what he actually did. TLDR. Pedophile was accidentally placed in general population and was boiled alive. Guy was locked up for murdering a woman in a motel back in 2017 and during his trial said he would kill someone else if he had the chance, even went as far to say that if he was housed with anyone else he would kill them. Fast forward to 2019, he was in a cell with another guy and COs on that post didn't do bed checks for a couple days, and when someone finally did walk by, the guy just casually said to the CO, "Hey, I killed my cellie." I wasn't at that prison, but I saw the report and it looked like it was out of a horror movie. Guy's head was sitting on his bunk, torso was hanging from the shelves. He had cut his tongue out and put it on a necklace, then wrote some satanic shit on the walls with his cellie's blood. I was at a level 3 prison in Ohio. When you're in a disciplinary block, you get rec outside in essentially a little cage built like a rectangle. Big enough to walk back and forth and has a pull-up, dip bar. 2 people to a cage. They must have put these 2 dudes in the same cage unknowingly, but I'm a skeptic because COs do get paid off. Anyway, one of the dudes pull out a knife and he starts going crazy with it, stabbing the guy over and over, and the guy is running with nowhere to go. The COs on duty were terrified and it took way too long to get the situation under control. The life flight helicopter landed outside the prison within 30 minutes. On a side note, where I was they had ambulances every week up there. They'd usually pronounce them dead once they left the prison property to avoid some legal recourse, I believe. Sorry for spelling on a mobile app. My first and last stay at the Indiana Department of Corrections. It was a nightmare that I still suffer from that has changed me for the worse. After being classified, I was transferred from RDC, Reception Diagnostic Center, to Westville Correctional Facility. Also known as Partyville, this prison has horrendous stories and has even been investigated multiple times by the FBI for violence. Also, it is heavily segregated due to the high racism and violence. I met with their classification officer and given the information where I was staying. When I walked into the housing dorm and approached the guard to inquire where my bunk was, the officer looked up from his book. When he saw that I was white and our eyes met, I've never seen such fear in someone's eyes before. In an instant he was out from behind his desk, grabbed me so fast, and literally dragged me from the dorm. In that instant I lost everything because I wasn't expecting it and I dropped everything. He dragged me into the outside hallway and pinned me to the wall. The guard got on his radio and literally started yelling for a white hat, an officer needs assistance. Within minutes the hallway was full of other officers and finally a white hat. It was then when looking around, I noticed I was the only white in the hallway and dorm. The white hat yelled at me asking me what I was doing there. I showed him my paperwork. The white hat started talking over his radio inquiring as to why a white was being housed in an all-black dorm. I couldn't believe what I heard over the radio. Apparently it was April 1st and the classification officer thought it would be funny to house a white in an all-black, violent dorm with high security risk level inmates. I was a level 10, the lowest security risk level. I should never have been housed in Westville to begin with. It's not over. That incident should have been a warning what was coming next. I was then finally transferred to Miami Correctional Facility, behind the gate. Remember, I was a level 1 to 0. I should have been housed at the level 10 facility outside the gate. Later it was discovered the classification officer at this facility misread my paperwork. Within 2 days I was confronted and asked to see my paperwork. I had nothing to hide. I knew what they were looking for, but it didn't matter. I was serving 4 years for burglary. I handed over my paperwork, then I heard the words "no male in prison wants to hear." The guy the first handed over the paperwork to said my paperwork was fake and I printed it in the law library. I was a child molester. And that I even looked like one. Then out of the blue someone said their people on the outside even verified I was a child molester. At that moment all I can think was, how in the hell is my paperwork fake? How in the hell could I have printed it in the law library seeing I haven't even stepped into one yet? And this is my first and only criminal offense. I have no record of anything else. Before I knew it, I was out. I remember nothing more. I woke up in the infirmary 3 months later. I was beaten so badly, multiple concussions, broken nose, jaw, orbital socket, teeth, hand, 3 ribs, and leg. Stabbed 6 times. I served the rest of my time in protective custody. According to a guard I spoke to, some of the inmates involved were told later they were wrong about my conviction and paperwork. The inmate's response: "I look like a child molester, which makes me a child molester, too bad for me." According to the guard, this was true of the inmate's way of thinking and the prison rules. Even if you're not a child molester, and your paperwork clears you, you better hope you don't look like one. How has this changed me? I seriously distrust men and people now. I've bulked up, learned boxing among other things. Quick to anger and defend myself. I have a serious hatred for men now. I'll fight strike first to ensure nothing bad happens to me. I've grown a beard, got tattoos, and make sure to dress in such a way to ensure no one thinks I look like a child molester. I've stayed clear of breaking the law, barely. I've been told I've become a hard asshole now. Once watched a man elbow another dude in the face 40+ times because he was a suspected goof, completely destroyed the man's face, broke both his eye sockets, nose, most of his teeth, and nothing happened from it. Dude got 5 days CCC, and the guard that dropped the hint about the dude's crimes brought us extra jug-ups and meals at mealtime for 2 weeks. Here's the twist though. Dude that got his face wrecked just unfortunately had the same name as the dude that was supposed to get it. Guards didn't even give a shit. Been in a South American prison, right in Los Andes, working on a mine next to it. We used to stay there, as temporal shelter from the cold. People there were murderers, thieves, smugglers. But not rapists were stripped naked and beaten, then left to death in the cold desert. Once we were arriving and there was what was left of some dude, smashed to the last bone, purple from the frozen blood. Guards didn't even realize he was missing. My boss was not ready for that. She never came back to work and was attending depression rehab for some time. I saw a dude thrown in the hole purely for amusement. This dude was excited about seeing his newborn kid for the first time. He only found out she was pregnant a couple weeks before for sentencing, and happened to mention it where a guard overheard. They just threw him in the shoe. For nothing. And laughed about it. You can't get visits if you're in there. You can't use the phones or write letters, and as prisoner there's nothing you can do. I mean, you can write a grievance, but the people reading them are the same people that you're writing them about. It was a couple weeks before he got out, then quite a while before he got visitation privileges back, then more weeks before his wife and could make the trip again. Just awful people. The most terrifying isn't even something I witnessed personally, but the aftermath was messy. A bunch of chicks raped another inmate with things. Makeshift things. I wasn't there for that, but she pressed charges and it went on and on. About a year later they were calling inmates that were on her unit at the time to find witnesses. Surprise, none came forward. Here's the terrifying part. Every time one of those inmates came back, they were silent, wouldn't talk about it, wouldn't share what happened. I finally got a friend that was there to open up. She was tough as shit, but she broke as she told me about the sounds she heard that night. It's exactly as bad as what you imagine. 2 different things. The first being this one guy, he was from my town and he had only 4 months to go on his sentence. I didn't know him all that well. One day, I go out to the yard. We had been out there for an hour when we noticed a red dot, basically all the guards running to an emergency of some sort. We didn't know what it was. Then they proceeded to keep our particular dorm outside for longer than all the others. People just figured there was a fight. Then we started seeing men in suits, state police, and we knew something was up. Turns out this guy from my town had been called a bitch by this new dude. So they decide to fight in the bathroom. Dude who got called a bitch ended up being exactly that and got his ass handed to him in the bathroom. Dude thought that would be the end of it. So, the bitch waits a few hours. Opens up a can of food, takes the top of the can, folds it in half, conceals it in his hand. Goes up to the dude to break bread, basically say, "You won, good fight, it's over." As he is reaching to shake the guy's hand, pulls out said can top and just starts hacking this guy. Apparently during this part of the artery in his neck got clipped by the can top. Blood was fucking everywhere. Guy tries to crawl his way to the CO's desk while the other dude tried changing his clothes. He was covered in blood too. They finally get this guy some medical attention and begin the investigation. Basically, it was attempted murder because the guy was in critical condition after that. The reason we stayed in the yard was because it was a crime scene and the state troopers that lead the investigation needed the scene not to be disturbed. We finally get let back in and there was fucking blood all over. Police don't clean, so it was up to the inmates to take care of a murder scene. Guy had 4 months to go and went straight to solitary to face the new attempt murder charges. And BTW, it would have been murder had the guy not ended up pulling through in the end. All because someone called him a bitch. I'm late and this took more words than I thought. If anyone wants to hear the other story, let me know. I'll type it out.